Here, and it's Monday morning. My gosh, there's a whole lot of things going on. The empire is up to its usual no good violence, brutality, lies, and all that stuff. And Laith Marouf is going to help us to understand what's happening in the Middle East. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon. And before we get going, we just want to remind everybody we have Laith Marouf, and he's got a great site. It's freepalestine.video. You can see, look at that, man. Look at this. This is one of the best sites you'll ever find when it comes to information on what's happening in the Middle East, when it comes to video on the scene, when it comes to, reporting from the scene. And people who understand the culture, who understand the language, who understand everything that's going on, understand the history. You can't do better than freepalestine.video. Make sure you go there. Field reports, latest episodes, military operations. And of course, if there's any way you can, donate to Free Palestine TV, which is freepalestine.video. Right now is more important than ever as the empire goes on its mad rampage. We need Laith Marouf and his people over at freepalestine.video to keep us apprised of their devious actions. If you in any way can afford it, please make sure you, number one, donate, and number two, share this, whether you can or not. Make sure you share freepalestine.video on all your social media accounts, and on the post, make sure you ask people to donate. Let me state one thing that, I've heard a little discussion about it, and let me show you something. There's something under international law called perfidy. What is perfidy? What is the violation of this law, this international law? Let's look at it. Acts inviting the confidence of an adversary to lead him to believe he is entitled to or is obliged to grant protection under the rules of international humanitarian law applicable in armed conflict, with intent to betray that confidence constitutes perfidy, right? The following acts are examples of perfidy: feigning an intent to negotiate under flag of truce, right? Here's my point. Donald Trump has admitted to violating the international law of perfidy. He's admitted, look, we were pretending to negotiate, but the whole time we had a knife, but we're negotiating with a knife behind my back. Stick your hand out, shake my hand. Everybody knows, boom, that way I can pull you in and stick the knife in you. That's why you never reach out. Be very aware when you reach out to shake somebody's hand that you don't trust. But at any rate, so here's my point. As if we didn't know that the empire was just a criminal empire. Just another example of the total disregard for international law. All right, Laith Marouf, let's get going. What are your thoughts of what's happening here with the regional, as you've said all along? Let's go further than the regional war. If anybody thinks this isn't World War III, they're not paying attention. Anyway, your thoughts, Laith.
Yeah, definitely Trump abused his position and drew, as you said, Iran into negotiating while they're preparing for this attack. But I also want to make it clear from, I watched multiple interviews of the current Iranian military leadership on Iranian television stations, and it's clear right now that the Iranian military knew that this was a trap, that the Zionists are preparing to attack them. But at the same time, the Iranians know that this war is going to be conducted as a war against the Americans and all the West combined. Therefore, what we see of the current response of Iran are all calculated in that context. They will not be revealing all their weapons, all their power, until the West is directly, openly involved. They also know that they are already in a war with the West. up until now, the Israeli military is defeated. It's not the Israelis that are committing all these attacks on Iran. That's the combined West. And finally, I want to say that, you know, the Zionists have been playing this game of, because much of the people in the West and the world have been saturated in the idea of Jewish supremacy. They have been lying to everybody about these attacks that are happening in Iran, saying that, well, we have, you know, control of the theater over the air of Iran, and we're bombing anywhere we want to, and we're so powerful, we can do this. In reality, 80%, if not more, of the attacks that we are seeing currently happening are conducted by infiltration groups, like the ones that attacked Russia's nuclear bombers a few weeks ago, that have drones and ATGMs. The majority of the assassinations that happened inside Iran on the first night were conducted by ATGMs fired from somebody's shoulder less than 5 kilometers away from the bedrooms of those Iranian scientists and generals that were assassinated. That's not a big achievement. This is this is
just terrorism. Just all they can do is terrorism.
Yes, and now over the last 24 hours, the Iranians have uncovered at least 3 of these warehouses where the drones and ATGMs are being built and or distributed, captured hundreds of these agents of the West on the ground. We even saw a few videos of them being lynched, by the way.
They're all
yeah.
done.
Yeah, so what the Americans and Trump was trying to do on the first night, telling the Ayatollah that you're left alone, you know, surrender now, you know, all of that was psychological warfare dependent on the latent racism in all of our minds, that we've accepted that somehow these chosen people have the hand of God with them and can reach the middle of Tehran by a jet from the Zionist colony. This is all delusions, okay? And I can tell you, you know, just a few hours ago, the Iranian air defenses shot down an MQ-9 Reaper, American Reaper drone on over Iranian territory. So the United States is already involved in this. The Iranians haven't activated the majority of their air defenses, by the way, other than the ones that are on the border with Iraq, where the majority of attacks are coming from the air are, in order to keep that for the next stage that is going to happen, where there's no way out of this.
Yep.
We will be seeing the United States already now. Over the last few hours, we saw the transponders of 25 jet fueling, you know, American military Air Force jet fuelers flying over the Atlantic. 25 of them have just now landed across Europe and are continuing their way to here. This is above and beyond the hundreds of British and French and Italian and German and American fighters that are being distributed across the region here. The attack will come from them, and that's when the real war is going to start. Israel is already defeated. The Iranians are going to fire today new weapons that haven't been used yet. Their missiles over the last 72 hours have opened like a highway in the air defense systems of the Zionist colony, stretching from the Golan Heights all the way to Tel Aviv. There's no air defenses in that highway. And the missiles that are going to come today are going to change the face of the Zionist colony. There will be no more electricity, no more gas, no more anything. And over the last night, you know, all the viewers probably have watched all those videos from Haifa and Tel Aviv, but more than 60% of the attack yesterday by Iran was concentrated on the Israeli bases in the Golan Heights and North Palestine. And you could hear the explosions and feel the ground shaking in Nabatiyah city in South Lebanon, 15 kilometers, like 12 miles away from the border, right? So right now the whole north of Palestine is exposed for even an infiltration by ground. Okay, so this war is in its first stages, and the real war is going to be against the West as a whole. People should expect that the oil and gas facilities in the region are going to be up in flames, and there's the gas and oil prices are going to quadruple at least, and prepare accordingly, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, you're right. And here's an example. You know, one of the things I've said is the U.S. uses all of their proxies are nothing but cannon fodder, and sooner or later they find out. In the same way that, you know, I've continually compared the Israelis to the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are nothing but cannon fodder to be used, right? And I put it like this: look, if the goose is getting fattened up, the lamb or the goat is getting fattened up for the celebration. When the celebration comes, yes, the lamb and the goose enjoy that food, but that food ain't there to help you out. It's to fatten you up for the celebration. You will be sacrificed. In the same way that the Ukrainians, they're getting this money, they're getting all this stuff. They were getting fattened up to be sacrificed on the altar of Russia. It is my opinion. Israelis, no difference. They're fattening them up to be sacrificed, and now they're going to care less about the Israelis. The U.S. and the West have always been the most anti-Semitic place in the world. The Muslims weren't the ones who committed the Holocaust. It was the West, right? Here's the point here. Let me show you something. Let me show you this. This is Haaretz. Israel tells airlines not to let Israeli citizens leave, even once repatriation flights start. Now, is this, what is this? This is Haaretz, right? So now what Netanyahu is saying, you know, it's interesting because all of these Israelis were dancing around. They were having picnics and watching, oh, look at the light show. They're bombing Lebanon. Ha, ha, ha. Look at the light show. Now they're bombing Gaza. Ooh, we've shut down all of the exits. So the people in Gaza, they can't leave and we can just, ha, ha, ha. Now they're looking around and you know what they're saying? Hey, our city looks like Gaza. Okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm going back to New Jersey. Where's my ticket? Sorry. All exits are closed, buddy. You're here too. It's your turn. And now the Israelis are nothing but cannon fodder for what goes around comes around, right? And my dad used to always say stuff like an even swap ain't no swindle, things like that. Now you are nothing but the empire. It's your turn. It's your turn to be sacrificed at the altar of U.S. imperialism, and that's what they're going to get. They thought they were special. Well, this is what they're getting now. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's two things there. Number one is obviously the Zionists have usurped the voice of the Jewish peoples around the world, you know, there's a very famous book called Jews Against Zionism, and it talks about the history of the battle within the Jewish community. And, you know, the vast majority of American Jews prior to the end of World War II were anti-Zionist, but the waves of East European Jews that were Zionists that came between the two world wars started changing the balance. The majority of Germanic and Anglo Jews in the United States were integrated and didn't see themselves as separate. And to the last moment of the declaration of the creation of the State of Israel, there was, you know, huge battles within the Jewish community at that time. But and what we've seen since then, obviously, is the Zionists usurping Jewish voice in organizations and now providing their own people, just like Zelensky and the other Ukrainian elite are willingly sacrificing their people because of master in the White House. Similarly, the Zionist elite are doing that with Jewish people, and that's a fact. Now, in terms of what has happened over the last 24 hours is that close to 2 million Israelis were looking for tickets to leave. Already there's 1.5 million that left since October 7th, and the number of actual colonists inside Palestine was down to just above 5 million from the 7-8 million that they're supposed to be. And if you would have lost another 2 million,
So,
There's really
so
no more state. It's over,
yeah,
right? So they're locking them in, and there's now a rush to the ferries that take you to Cyprus, and I encourage them all to get on those ferries. And there's a rush on the borders with Egypt. The treacherous Egyptian government that has not been allowing anybody to bring aid to Gaza is now opening its Sinai borders for these Zionists to run.
good.
Similarly, the Jordanian government is doing that the same.
And I'd say good. Clear the whole thing out.
Clear the whole thing out.
Empty it, but once and for all.
And what we just discovered, obviously, you remember all this propaganda about Arabs don't care about their own populations, they don't have bunkers for them, right? What we just discovered is that actually these bunkers don't work in the Zionist colony when there's a real war. It's just a basement under the building, and if there's a missile takes down the whole building, the whole basement goes on top of you and you're dead. That's what's happening. And this is why there's right now kind of almost fist fights between Zionists. Actually, we have videos of people fighting to go into the few real bunkers that are not just basements under buildings. And
the ones for the elite. Those are the ones for the elite. The elite.
Yes.
Well, no, the elite. They're getting the hell out of there. They will be allowed to leave.
They already left.
Yeah,
they already left.
They're in Florida.
By the way, Netanyahu's house has been hit.
Yep.
Smotrich's house in Kadumim settlement in the West Bank has been destroyed, but they're not there. They're already out of the country. And the other thing that we saw with these videos is that a lot of international workers, foreign workers, Thai, Filipino, Indian, are being kicked out of these bunkers and not allowed to enter. There's a video circulating right now with these Jewish supremacist colonists telling them these bunkers are only for Jews in those wards. And you could see these sad faces of these foreign workers that are gonna sleep in the street not knowing if they're gonna die or not. And all of these things forced the Israeli government to open the subways as collective bunkers. But you know, with subways, if a few missiles hit the entrances, you're going to have a totally buried underground thousands of people.
Well, not only that, these bunkers generally have generators. So when the electric plants go out, they have generators to keep the lights. There ain't no generators for the subway bunkers. You go down there when the electric plants go out, which they're going out, you're just stuck in the dark with nowhere, no direction, no way to go. You're in a world of trouble.
Yeah. And this, already, by the way, Iran yesterday hit two major power plants, one major one and one transformer. There's only one more electric plant left. Yesterday, the Iranians destroyed the Haifa electricity plant and the Khadaira, distribution or whatever transformer that feeds the whole north of Palestine. And that's why we see now cuts in hours of electricity for the north, because the main power plant near Tel Aviv, just south of Tel Aviv, is now feeding the whole country. The Jordanian and Egyptian house slaves are also feeding the network of electricity into the Zionist colony to keep the lights on. So if tonight, which is expected, that Iran will destroy the remaining electricity plant, then the Zionist colony will be dependent 100% on electricity coming from Jordan and Egypt. And for sure, those high voltage towers will be hit at some point. That's kind of what's going to happen in the next 24 hours. I think tonight, we will see a mass destruction in the Zionist colony. And the next day, we will see the American direct involvement being launched, that is in the open.
Yeah, it's clear. And let me clear something up, my position on something. What people have said is Israel launched this to drag the Americans in. That ain't the way I see it. It's all a fraud. the American empires threw Israel at Iran as an excuse to start the war. You go in and you hit them. They're going to knock the crap out of you, and then I'll have my excuse to go in the war. It's not like Israel is some separate entity that acts on their own, and then the U.S. empire goes, oh my, what did they do? How will we possibly respond? That's pure crap. At the same time, they were putting, at the same exact time, they're building these fake, drone bases and things inside of Russia so they can launch a sneak attack on Russia. They're building these fake drone bases inside of drone stuff inside of Iran so they can launch a sneak attack on Iran. And let me say this. Hello, China. Find the drone bases. You know they're there. Look, they're negotiating with you. If they're negotiating with you, that means they're building drone bases inside of your country to launch a sneak attack. That's, I mean, how many times do they have to do it? So I'm sure China right now is searching out the drone bases because they know damn sure what they're doing inside of China. Anyway, so your thoughts.
Yes, yes, and look, it used to be historically that if you're a big nation geographically and population-wise, that there was an advantage to you, okay? Because you know, your capital will be so far away from the border. You just put your troops on and defense lines, so on, and you're good. But small nations that have very small geographic depth were cursed. You know, a few missiles from the border hits anything inside. Well, now it's actually the bigger you are population-wise and landmass-wise, the more vulnerable you are to this new warfare technologies. You know, if you have a population of 90 million like Iran, you can't monitor everybody all the time. I mean, you're already being accused of being a police state, and you have only a fraction of the power of the US of monitoring your whole population. And the bigger your geography is, the more checkpoints you need to do and check every truck and every container and every warehouse. That's an impossibility. So you become more vulnerable now to these new technologies. So the United States is actually the most vulnerable to also this same kind of warfare out of all the collective West, because of how big the population is and how big the territory is. So, you know, two can tangle, two can play this game, you know, as they would say, and we should be expecting probably in the very near future, similar warfare being conducted in France, in Germany, in the UK, in the US, because the US is normalizing this kind of warfare with the Zionist colony. And so this is, I think, you know, but there's a limit also to this kind of warfare. If the enemy, if your target, like the Iranian government, is able to absorb the first blow, or the Russian government, as happened, and the Russian military had absorbed the first blow of attacks on its strategic bombers, then you have a chance to do a mass shake-up and the shakedown in the population, and you will not only be able to capture those who already committed the crimes, but capture those who are preparing for other things. So now we have people inside Iran and people inside Russia also, very careful, watching every truck that passes their neighborhood, every individual that they've never seen come and want to rent an apartment or rent a warehouse, immediately informing the authorities, because everybody is now on a high alert of the internal enemy. So there's so much you can do with this tactic, and Iran was able to absorb the first blow, and now we're into serious warfare.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The thing about it is this, and that is the weakness of the empire is always this, that all they can do at this point is they can never put troops on the ground. And, you know, I told you my brother was my brother. It's interesting. My brother was he was passed away. He was a, you know, special forces, all that kind of stuff. He was converted to Judaism in the 80s when he was in the military, and he was an ardent anti-Zionist. More so, I'll put it like this. I couldn't bring him on this channel, or they'd throw me. He was Jewish. He went to the synagogue every week. I couldn't bring him on this channel, or they'd throw me off if he was still alive, because they'd throw me off of YouTube. He was furious at him, right, at the Zionists and the whole Israeli thing. And he took the position that a lot of his Jews take, that Israel is not supposed to be formed until after the Messiah. You know, they say that was his position that he took. But anyway, here's my point. He always said this about wars. There's only one way to win a war. As he put it, a man with a rifle. When it comes down to it, you have to have troops and boots on the ground, or you're never going to win a war. The only thing, even now, so the empire says, okay, we're going to send in planes. All this stuff is going there. So we're going to attack from the air and fire missiles and all that kind of stuff. No matter what. Sooner or later, you run out of missiles. Sooner or later, you run out of planes. Sooner or later, you can't do that forever. And the people that are there are still going to be standing. And you're going to, in this day, in the age of technology, if I can figure that out and you can figure it out, the people in the region can figure it out, which means they're going to have a plan to address it. And so the U.S. is, I think, they're putting themselves. They have no clue what they're getting themselves into. Will they have some success? Sure. No, it's a war. Let me tell you this: Israel started, and within the first 8 hours, they were dancing in the streets. Ha ha ha! Look what we did. Yes. Oh boy, we slammed the Iranians, and within 18 hours, they were like horrified. Uh-oh, this didn't work the way we wanted.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of studies out there about the rate of depletion of the air defenses that the Zionists control, and or the West in the region as a whole, or in the world for that matter. There is less than 2,000 missiles on the whole planet here that can feed the THAAD, for instance, and if the US sends all the missiles that it had produced to defend Israel, then North Korea's will not have any missiles on their THAAD systems, or Germany, those THAAD systems that are stationed in Germany. It's a really huge weakness. So these studies that are out there about the various levels of air defenses that Israel has shows us that in the best case scenario, with exaggerated numbers of productions for the Iron Dome, Patriot, Davis Sling, Arrow 1, 2, 3, and the THAAD, the West will run out of missiles. If Iran continues on the rate now, which is 70, 80 missiles a day only, within 15 days. 15 days at this rate, Israel will not have any air defense systems. And of course, what we will see is tonight, starting from tonight, the Iranians are going to be using much newer missiles, much more of them. And since there's already all this openings within air defense systems because of the destruction recorded on video of at least 2 Arrow systems and a Davis Sling, all in the last 48 hours, that means that actually Israel will run out of the batteries before they run out of missiles. Even so, I expect that within 10 days, Israel will be totally exposed. Not the 15 days that are the best case scenario, and then it's a field day. Anyone can cross in and cause chaos inside the Zionist colony, and this is why the Americans are moving in right now. So I think best case scenario is there will be no more. Israel and the United States will withdraw from the region. Worst case scenario is we will see ourselves in a nuclear war very soon.
Yeah, the bottom line is this, and I'll go one further. Based on even with full air defense that they've had, that's being quickly depleted, 7 to 10 days of this, there ain't much Israel left anyway. You know what I mean? I mean, Israel is very small. What do they got? A half a dozen or so power plants. They're
actually 2 only power plants. 2 only.
Their actual infrastructure is very, very small. it's being hit daily. 10 days.
The mayor
They
of Tel
will,
Aviv a few hours ago came out on Israeli television and said Israel have already lost $3 billion in costs fighting this war right now in just those 2 days. This is not the damage to the infrastructure and to buildings and so forth. $3 billion. This is what, so it's costing them almost $1.5 billion on a per day, the Israeli government, to fight this war.
yeah. So the bottom line is, and all of those things don't matter, because I put it like this. You don't have power plants, you don't have water treatment plants, you can't run anything, you can't do anything, and you have a population who's not from there. And why does Israel exist? What is the argument? Come here where you're safe. It's not safe for Jews around the world. You have to come to Israel where the Jews are safe. Come to Israel that is a pile of rubble. You come here, you're in the midst of World War III. You're in the heart of World War III. You're going to get bombed day and night, and you will not be allowed to leave. Anyone who can will get the hell out and will never come back. Effectively, I would argue now, it's over for Israel. It's over today, right now. Anyone who can get the hell out of Israel, you're going to see, in my opinion, what you're seeing in Ukraine. They'll be driving around in trucks, kidnapping people, throwing them, sending them to the front line. They're not far from it now. You got a country that people are trying to get the hell out, and they will never come back. It's over for Israel. At this moment, I don't see anything in the future for Israel. Who in their right mind would stay in that country?
Yes, and as we said, there already people are looking for any way out. I think the situation is going to deteriorate fast for them inside there. Whoever is not able to leave, 90% of the population of the Zionist colony are stationed in this area between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And even their water is not coming from the rivers or the aquifers of the West Bank or the North. The water that they drink in this, population center is coming from 8 desalination plants on the Mediterranean, and they will be hit. And so they will not have electricity. They will not have water very fast. Okay, and this is why I think, people throughout this whole war were wondering why the axis of resistance is not going all in all at once from the beginning. A lot of people were emotional, including myself. Why is Iran waiting to get beaten before it does something? Why did Hezbollah not? And the answer is actually because the Zionist colony was defeated on October 7th. And it has ceased to exist as a military power or as a separate political entity from that day when American generals had to be sent to control this whole war after the assassination of 12 Israeli generals on October 7th, the top generals of the Israeli military. And so what does this mean for the axis of resistance? They knew at that point that actually, the faster you destroy Israel and the faster you defeat them, the higher risk it is to reach a nuclear holocaust situation of the world, the West using nukes to stop the axis of resistance. And so dragging this war at a huge human cost for the Palestinians, for the Lebanese, the Yemenis, the Syrians, and the Iranians is actually to minimize the human suffering of this whole planet. Every martyr in Gaza that is starving today, that could have been liberated 2 years ago with a direct attack from the axis of resistance on all fronts, every martyr there and their blood that was spilled is saving the children in the United States that could have been dead right now in a nuclear holocaust war that includes all the armies. So the hope is that the more it is drilled into the head of the Zionists and the West that Zionism has been defeated, that your white supremacy is not gonna work anymore, and that you have a chance to stay amongst equal with the rest of humanity, or a chance to be humiliated and defeated, the better it is. So every delay in the full defeat of Western power gives us a chance for, one, the elite in the West to wake up to the realities. And I know they're having a schizophrenic moment. They've been used to raised as the manifest destiny, chosen people, control, best of the best, creme de la creme, and they're waking up to the reality that they're not. And the other is that the more delay we have in this full confrontation, the better there is a chance for the population in the West to wake up and do something to stop their own elite, if they don't wake up their own elite, to stop their own elite from dragging them into a nuclear holocaust. So we are in this window now that the populace in the West has a chance that if they don't move on today, they will be seeing their own children die in their own hands.
Yeah, one of the things I think that it will happen soon, very, very soon, and that is Americans will feel the pain, because as soon as this starts, the Straits of Hormuz will be closed, the price of fuel will go through the roof, and Americans will go. But I've said for a long time, you really want to upset Americans, you give them that pain at the pump and everything involved in it, and you will see America go bananas, right? Within the next week or so. I would imagine, let's face it, it took Israel 2 days to get not just defeated, to get turned to rubble in 2 days. And Iran showed they could turn Israel, and everybody already knew that. And the U.S. empire knew that. The U.S. empire, I don't think, is really shocked. Israel was cannon fodder to be thrown out there. They don't give a crap. I mean, if you think about this, literally, these so-called people that supported the Jews always argue this. Yes, this is going to happen, and then God's going to come, and then the Jews will have a chance to convert, or they'll all be killed. That was what they said all along. So the idea that they actually care for the lives of the Jews, they always intended to sacrifice the lives of all Jews. That was always the plan, albeit it was a religious plan. What difference does it make to them? But now what's going to happen is the American people, within probably this week, the U.S., it wouldn't surprise me, since Israel's defeated in days, easily, today, tomorrow, something like that, the U.S. enters the war, and then the prices go through the roof, and then people here are going to go bananas. They're Trump's. I did an article interview last week where I said, will Trump commit political suicide? Trump's political cannon fodder. They want to get rid of him anyway. They want to get rid of MAGA. MAGA is going to go bananas and turn on Trump. The neocons are perfectly happy. They are the agents of chaos, and they're happy to have chaos in the United States just like that. We're all cannon fodder to that ruling elite.
Yes. And, you look at what the Americans are prepared to do. I think this may help, the viewers to understand. Logically, the U.S. controls all the oil and gas in the Arabic world right now. They're making a killing off the record, looting the oil of Libya, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and plus all of the Gulf countries that are basically cuckolds, and so logic will tell us that America will actually protect this.
Yeah.
Why would America risk it? But then you understand how illogical they are, how crazed they are, how bloodthirsty they are, that they're willing to have all this money burn in a second, and to crash the economies of Europe primarily, number one, and the electricity will go out in Europe without the oil and gas of the region here. The US at least has its own oil and gas. Maybe Trump will, force a price on the gas pump, but then again, I don't know. to at least keep his own population appeased. But Europe will go dark once these oil and gas fields are destroyed. So that's what logic will tell us. But because these individuals are illogical, they're willing to let it burn. They're willing to bring the whole of humanity to the edge of the abyss in order to continue with their hegemony over humanity. And the United States, once its assets and bases are destroyed in the region here, including the airfields that these Israeli and American crafts are taking out, whatever the word is, taking off from, that's when we get to the point of the risk of a nuclear weapon being used. And or a reckless attack on a nuclear site leading to huge nuclear fallout. And the wind blowing east means that fallout will fall on Pakistan. And this is why Pakistan is now saying that it will respond with the use of a nuclear weapon attacking Tel Aviv if Iran is attacked by a nuke and or a massive nuclear leak is resulted by an attack on a nuclear reactor in Iran. And people are surprised at this because, Pakistan and the Pakistani army are in the pocket of the CIA and the Saudis. But this is an issue of survival for them. A nuclear fallout on Pakistan, which is a country of 250, 280 million people, that's on a small territory, that's going to all have the fallout on them. That means the death of the children of these generals, no matter how collaborating they are with the Americans. They're not going to be willing to that. So I think everybody should take the words of Pakistan seriously. This is not propaganda alone. The Taliban in Afghanistan said that they will declare war on the United States and Israel if Iran is attacked and or its nuclear reactors are attacked. That's again not a joke, because again they will have the nuclear fallout on them. And if there's nuclear fallout in the region, it means all the paths for all the food in this area is polluted, and millions of people will be going starving. India will have also the same problem. China will have the same problem. And we will see ourselves with China being dragged into this war. There's a big possibility that India will also be dragged to this war if it sees that Pakistan is weakened and or Pakistan enters with a nuclear attack or defense of Iran. This is why the Zionists have been feeding and raising the profile and strengthening the Hindutva, the Hindu fascists, in order to make sure that the only Muslim country that has a nuclear weapon, Pakistan, is weakened and attacked. So people in the US that don't want us to end where is clearly where we're going to end if we continue on this path, need to take action now and make their government listen to the population's demands.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the first stage would be the complete and total destruction of the US and the Western economy, which, let me add this. Recently Trump said, oh, we need Palantir to, get profiles on everyone and all. I think the other part of it is this. The ruling elite have gamed this out, and which means massive crackdowns. This business of nabbing protesters, sending people to El Salvador and all of this kind of stuff, internal crackdowns, if things become politically unstable here, that these protests going on recently, which were all a scam, all of this stuff going on, I think they were creating the dynamics to make an excuse for a crackdown, so that so they have all these protests, So then Trump does this, and the millions of people in the street. And then they say, well, this is a continuation of these protests. They're trying to destabilize America. We got to crack down on the protests. They're creating a dynamic where when people legitimately come out and protest that their country's being wiped out and destroyed, they can crack down on the protesters with violence.
Yeah, and we've now moved to a phase where it's normalized that an unmarked white van can park right beside you on a sidewalk, open the side with masked people with no IDs on them, beat you up and throw you in the back of this van and disappear. And everybody on the street will just be looking and not even calling the cops. So, I mean, if I was a mafioso right now, this will be like my wet dream. I can literally nab anybody I want to now in the streets of the United States. And this is why the ICE fatigue and jackets and hats and so on are selling like crazy on eBay right now and Amazon and Alibaba, because that's all I need to kidnap you right now, Garland, if I want to. Okay, I just got a unmarked white van, a pedophile van. It used to be that people will be watching for these vans and these nabbings. Now it's normal. This is what people need to understand. Even those that may call themselves MAGA and genuinely are worried about migration and change of the culture and or jobs and economies. Damn, what are you allowing? Your daughter, your son could be nabbed by anybody tomorrow, and you will not have anything to know about it. You can't do anything about it. There will be no one helping you because this is normal. So we are past, I think, stages that most people didn't recognize that we passed. You mentioned the mass concentration camp in El Salvador. Whoa. I mean, this is a death camp. You're going into a black hole with thousands upon thousands of people from all walks of life just disappearing into this black hole with no legal recourse, with no way any state can get you out of there. The Venezuela is demanding the return of some 200 somewhat Venezuelans that are now disappeared into this El Salvadorian death camp, and El Salvador is refusing to give them their own citizens. So what is this? What kind of world we live in? It's I think these last few nights in Tel Aviv must act as a wake-up call for anyone that didn't understand how far down the abyss we've already fallen and how fast we are approaching the bottom of this abyss.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And we're in a situation now where, what's interesting is this. In America, you had these people who were like, oh, yes, we've got to stop fill in the blank. The Democrats, because the Republicans will blank. The Republicans, because the Democrats will blank, right? And there were those of us who were like, you got to be kidding me. You think one of these parties, and then it was okay. Well, and now what we're seeing is this. The machine is what it is. And those of us who abandon all that and recognize what it was. I used to always say, what do the people who are getting bombed by the US care if it's a Democrat or Republican, right? So now we are maybe getting to a situation where people wake up possibly too late, who knows? But your thoughts on, now this is something else I've said. I believe that if the US attacks Iran, its bases, not if, when, its bases will surely be attacked, but I think Africa too. I think there's areas and regions in Africa. I think there are people who will look at the US bases there and say, this is our opportunity to get these people the hell out. They're at their weakest. And I suspect, I'm not for it or against it. It is what it is. I'm just trying to say, I suspect that bases and embassies of the US around the world will be vulnerable, and there will be areas where people who are sick and tired of US imperialism will say, this is our opportunity.
Yeah, and I should note here that the only people helping the Sudanese military defeat the death squads of the rapid response units that are controlled by the United Arab Emirates and Egypt and the Haftar regime in Libya, and behind them America and Israel, the only ones that are helping the armed forces of Sudan are Iran and Russia. Okay, the only ones that are helping the new Sahel Confederacy are Iran and Russia. Okay, a lot of people talk about Russia's work in the Sahel region, but what they're not seeing is what Iran is doing. And in a situation where it's all-out war between the West and Iran, all the primary target of Iran will be the airfields in the whole region, all the way to Cyprus, which probably you'll be hit first before even the airfields in Iraq or Jordan, because that's where the command and control center for the whole air battle is now, in the British bases in occupied lands of Cyprus. And once the airfields in the region are out, there will be dependence on airfields in Africa and airfields inside Greece and Italy, and that's when the war is going to start prolificating inside Africa and maybe into European Union states. This is where we're heading. This is just the logical trajectory and the steps that are in front of us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the U.S. empire has revealed. But look, here's the bottom line: in revealing its treachery, in revealing what it has done against Iran, laughing, ha ha ha, we pretended to negotiate them, but we were really planning on doing them the whole time. We used negotiations as a ploy for attack. The U.S. is so discredited. What are they going to do? Yes, we're going to go back and negotiate with the Chinese. Oh boy, we're going to go back and negotiate with, they sent a letter to the North Koreans that said, Trump, I don't know if you saw that, and it said, oh yes, we want to talk with you in negotiations. And the North Koreans' answer was, we're not accepting the letter. I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me. No, we're a lot safer not to negotiate with you. So realistically, the U.S. empire is completely discredited worldwide. They can't negotiate with anybody. They can't talk to anybody. It's completely isolated. It can't do anything but reach out in anger and fury and punch in all directions. That's all the U.S. empire can do now.
Yes, and unfortunately, obviously, the United States is still the #1 military power in the world. China and Russia are huge and strong, but their military power is designed as a defense. The United States has almost 1,000 bases around the world, and its military power is designed as an offensive power. So, this is not going to be an easy thing. The United States is not going to be defeated easily. And the more humiliation the United States and the West receives from sovereign peoples like the Palestinians, the Yemenis, the Iranians, the crazier and more aggressive they'll get. So, we applaud anyone that stands in the face of America. And it is a battle for humanity. So the faster we see other actors getting involved in various ways, even if it's not a direct, sending people or weapons to Iran to save it, but opening other fronts, as you mentioned, the front in the Sahel could open up right now any minute. This is all of this withdrawal of forces by the French and the British and the Germans and so on from around the world to defend the Zionist colonies, opening weaknesses everywhere else. This is the chance for Venezuela, for instance, to go into Guyana and liberate the lands that Guyana controls, the oil fields that are feeding the British presence in the Caribbean. Okay, this is a chance for Latin American countries to invade El Salvador and liberate it from the American puppet there that has now a concentration camp. And
for China to eject U.S. imperialism from Taiwan.
Exactly. You don't wait. So we should all wish for Iran to be able to withhold as long as possible this invasion by the United States, and that anyone that is not willing to directly help Iran in the battle here on the battlefield, that they can open their own battle zones to distract and disperse the power of the empire.
Yeah, because what we're seeing is this, and it was obvious. The empire's, broken internally, politically, externally. So the Russians knew they were fighting all of everything. So now Ukraine, they realized it. As I've said, I did a video a long time ago, and they said, "What's going to happen with Ukraine?" I said, "The U.S. is going to exercise the Samsonite option. They're going to pack their Samsonite baggage and leave." So now they've looked at Ukraine and they said, "Well, that ain't working. We tried that; it didn't work. They're just going to abandon the hell out of Ukraine. Ukrainians, gave it a good shot. You're all doomed. Have a nice day." They're going to leave Ukraine sitting flat to whatever happens to them, and off they're going to go to their next project. And I've said this: the Ukrainians are going to end up pissed. One day, the Ukrainians are going to say, "It wasn't the Russians that were our enemies. It was the Americans and the Europeans all along." And the Ukrainians got a whole bunch of Nazis. They're going to be pissed at the Europeans, and they're going to be armed to the gills, and they're going to go do all kinds of terrorism all over Europe. So Europe is completely done and sacrificed, finished, over. It's nothing but a conflict zone. And now their focus is on the Middle East, on the Zionist colony, which is pretty much finished too. So the U.S. empire is just in collapse. Next comes the internal collapse, which could start within weeks. I think the internal collapse is coming.
Yeah, and I think everybody should realize that although the West opened the Ukraine war to weaken Russia, the main reason they opened the Ukraine war is because of Russia's involvement in Syria, and they wanted to force Russia to withdraw from Syria or abandon the Syrian government while it's defending its main borders with Ukraine. So now that the West got what it wanted in Syria from Russia, we will see definitely a drawback of their involvement in Ukraine and concentration on completing their war on the axis of resistance, since Russia has exited the battlefield here. So the Americans got what they wanted from starting Ukraine's war, and they're going to leave them to their fate very soon, except if Russia gets re-involved in this battle as it grows. And I think Russia will be one of the last countries that come to the aid of Iran as the belligerents on both sides, add more parties. So we may see China and North Korea and Pakistan all getting involved directly in this war before Russia comes to that conclusion.
Yeah, and I predict really some sort of internal collapse coming in the U.S. It seems to me, because the American people have been propagandized. And one of the things they've been propagandized to believe is that the U.S. military could go around the world and do all these terrible things and they wouldn't feel any pain. You know what I mean? They've been careful to make sure that the U.S. didn't feel it. So the U.S. could, we can do everything. We can start wars. Israel can do that. Everybody can do that, blah, 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 and we'll feel no pain. And when the American people feel pain, they'll be pissed. One last thing I'll say, and I have been predicting this for a long time. The American people, these same people who claim to be super pro-Zionist, when they feel pain, they'll blame the Jews. They'll blame the Jews. In America, these same people that are like, "Oh, we've got to stop anti-Semitism. We must support Israel no matter what. I stand with Israel, 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 Israel," right? "Oh, we're standing with the Jews." That when they wake up and their economy's in trouble and they can't afford anything at their job, they're getting laid off, their life is going to hell, everything, somebody's saying, "We need to take your kids and send them over to die for Israel." They're going to look for somebody to blame, and the ruling elite are going to say, "Well, don't blame us." They're going to look for somebody to blame too. And once again, just like back in the World War II, they will revert to the mean and they will say, "Well, I guess we got to blame the Jews." They got to look for somebody to blame. And I see that coming. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, Israel is the walking stereotype of that Jewish tax collector
Yep.
on all the Arabs and Muslims in the whole region, and the old British royalty, anytime the serfs, the workers would revolt, they would say, blame it on the tax collector that's Jewish. And remember, the Jews were not allowed in Great Britain to work except in these jobs, right, for this reason. And so Israel as a whole, as a colony, is playing that same role. And yes, when the time comes and the wretched of the earth revolt inside and outside the empire, they will throw these Jews to the wolves. And, so one thing I would say here, with all my humanism, I personally don't feel like I have a stake in this horse. Jewish people have a duty to liberate their own religion from the Zionists. Jewish people have the duty to protect their own future and children from the harms that these Zionists are bringing them. And if they can't do that, and if they agree already, the vast majority of them on this, actions of the Zionists, it's not my fault and or duty to try to stop the collapse of the reputation of Judaism or its, the coming revenge that's gonna be a result of this genocide that we're saying. So it's a call from here to on all humanist Jews, real Jews that are anti-Zionist, true ones that represent the great teachings of Prophet Moses, to rise up and liberate their synagogues and schools and hospitals from the Zionist elite. Otherwise, they've got nobody else to blame for what's coming.
I would argue we've done everything we could to protect them. You know what I mean? I would argue that our work for peace, our work for the resolution of discrepancies in a nonviolent way, our work to end oppression and all of these other things, we've been working to protect everyday people, which what we're talking about, regular old people. We've been working to protect everyday people, and that the people that came after us couldn't see that we were always on their side. Not as Jews, not as Arabs, not as black or white people. We were on the side of the everyday person who gets up and goes to work and tries to make a living and feed their family versus these genocidal lunatic ruling elite. We were always on the side of all of these people. And unfortunately, those who couldn't see that we were on their side, well, because what we were saying is, look, man, you're going to suffer the same as we are. You can call yourself anything you want. We all are the ones who are going to suffer together. And those who couldn't see that at some point, they will be the ones that when they wake up and say, we got to take to the streets, and we'll say, well, understand you're going to be oppressed. Understand they're going to attack the protesters. They're going to arrest the protesters. They're going to bomb the protesters. We tried to tell you that. You waited until things got really bad. We could have done it earlier. And it's so obvious. The whole setup. Is it an accident? All of these protests happen just before they start their World War III. These fake protests. And might I add, let me show you something before we go. I got to show you something that I've been telling people all along. Let me show you something. The people, this No Kings protest, okay? Now, this is your nokings.com and all that, right? Millions of to reject authoritarianism. What does that even mean? Let's go down and see. The spokespeople available, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. Leah Greenberg, two arch Zionists. They're behind the whole thing. They're behind. If you look at behind the whole thing is Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. And if you look at their history, Leah Greenberg worked for Tom Piarello. You know what Tom Piarello did for many, many years, till just the last few months? He was the CEO of Open Society Foundation. George, what's his name? So what you're looking at is classic regime change protests, right? The Open Society Institute puts together protests. No kings. Here's the key to that. There's no meaning to that. What does that mean? We don't have a king. So they put together a protest, no kings. What does that mean? They didn't ask for anything. They didn't ask for healthcare. They didn't ask for peace. They didn't literally ask for one thing. They just said, let's protest and let's hold up a sign that says no kings. It meant nothing. And if you look at the people that were behind it, it was Open Society Institute. Ezra Levin, he worked for, you know what he did? He ran this nonprofit that was funded by BlackRock. That's what he did. So you have a person who ran a nonprofit funded by BlackRock, and a person who worked for the Open Society Institute's CEO. The Open Society Institute, when those two got married, the guy, Tom Piarello, who was the Open Society's Institute's CEO, he was the MC at their wedding. So this is so obvious what's going on here, that the people, let's have millions, 5 million people took to the street. What did they protest? Absolutely nothing. It was all a setup. So now when they protest, they'll crack down on the protests. You know what they'll do? Everything will go to hell, and they'll say, no kings is going to bring back the people to protest. What are we protesting? Trump or something like that. Not World War III, not gas prices, not nuclear war, nothing. They'll bring them together and they'll tell them what to protest, and it'll be absolutely nothing. It's so obvious. And I'm like, I would laugh if it were funny, but it's not.
Isn't it hilarious? No kings, and it's started by a guy and his wife, and they have a kingdom of their own.
Yeah.
It's like the worst kind of what do you call it when you hire people not because of their skills?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Nepotism. And I mean, I as you're talking, I've never heard of this guy, but he reminded me, his name Ezra Levin, of one of the craziest Zionists in Canada. I thought for a second we were talking about the same guy, but now I look and he's like a GQ and Politico and the most influential and hottest newer politician, political activists. They're naming them, and honestly, they don't look good. Either of them, in any standards, okay? And I'm not gay or something, but I know if I were a woman, I wouldn't think this guy, deserves a GQ cover. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell is happening here? What kind of psychological warfare is this? But the contradictions between the fantasy that the elite want to create and the reality on the ground is becoming so opposite, so dramatically in opposition, that it's like kind of glitches in the matrix, right? So no kings, but it's nepotism, him and his wife. He's an ugly guy, and they're putting him on GQ, most handsome political activist. What the hell is happening here? Okay, so let's hope the elite continue to mess up and continue to be so disattached from this plane of reality that we're in, that they can't recognize their demise as it's coming until it's too late.
Yeah, thank you very much. Once again, everybody, let me forget no kings. We're going to go to our favorite website, which is, of course, let me get it to here. I'm moving kind of slow. All right. This is the important website. It's called freepalestine.video, Free Palestine TV. You can find it at freepalestine.video. There's a couple of things that are important. Make sure you go to the social media links and follow FPTV, freepalestine.video. Make sure you go to the social media links, follow them on all their social media outlets so you'll get updated regularly. Make sure you check out their latest episodes, field reports, military operations, and most importantly, there's a button right there for you to donate to Free Palestine TV. That's right. Donate. There you go. You can see you can donate one time, but more importantly, if possible, make sure you donate monthly so they have a recurring monthly revenue, RMR as they call it in the business world. And that allows them, even if you can only give a little bit, you might say, well, I can only give $5. Well, guess what? Maybe you can give $5 monthly instead of one time. Now, there are those out there who have a lot more. There are people watching right now who are loaded, who got millions of dollars, whatever. Hey, look, if you got a lot of money, this is an opportunity to say, you know what, I want to give it to a good cause. I want to try to help save the world, which is literally and figuratively what you're trying to do. So if somebody's out there and they got a whole lot, you might have $1,000, $100,000, 50,000, 10,000, 500, whatever. Those who have a lot and you know who you are, go to freepalestine.video and help them out. And those who only got a little bit, you can do monthly. And might I add one last thing, and that is, let's say you don't have a dime. You can still share this on all your social media platforms, and you can put a little note in that says, hey, everybody, make sure you donate. And here's the link to go there and check out all the stuff there. So thanks a lot, Laith. I'm glad that we can be a part of your community, that we can work together, that we can help to wake people up, that we can help to push back against, people who, even that, we're bringing this up. For all that's happened, we're saying we're here to make sure that Jewish people aren't scapegoated and killed, that regular old people. We're here to make sure that people of all races and creeds and colors, and we're not here to be anti-Semitic. We're not here to be anti-anything, racist, anything. We're here for the regular people of the world who are being put in a bad situation by the ruling elite. So I'm proud to be a part of, hanging out with you and what you're doing there, Laith.
Thank you very much, Garland. I love being on your show weekly, and we'll see you next week, inshallah.
I think we're gonna have a big show. I have a friend of mine. I'll end up by saying this. A buddy of mine that I always talk with, and for like everything since the special military operation started, he would be like, "We're done. That's it." How many things have happened? There's nuclear war, and I'd always say, I just don't think the universe wants us to go. I think we're going to.
Yes.
No, we're done, Garland. After this, there's fire attack comes in. I'm like, I just feel somewhere out in the universe that the universe is like, yeah, come on, I made these little critters here. I think I'll keep them around a while, right? And he's like, no, not this time, we're done. So I still got this feeling for all of the things that would make it look like we're done, that in this great universe of consciousness, that the universe of consciousness is just saying, nah, I can pull a rabbit out of the hat. You know what I mean? These dummies, if you leave them to their own accord, they'll do themselves in. But I think it's far greater than that. So I'm going to suggest that I felt all along we're going to make it, and that's what's going to happen. Might not be the best of times. But, let me say this. Sometimes, and my cousin always says this, he says this, Americans only learn through pain. When Americans feel the pain of economics that they ain't used to, maybe that's the wake-up call they need. We shall see. So thanks a lot, Laith, and let's keep in touch. And everybody, freepalestine.video. We're out.